The Good Dinosaur is a movie about death, religious fanaticism, romanticism, learning to let go of the past, and slavery. It's alright. As weird as it sounds to say now, there was once a time when Disney was actually good. I know, crazy, right? I was crazy once. They locked me in a room, and so on and so forth. Looking back on it now, it's kind of insane the generational run they were on in the early 2010s. Tangled officially marked the full transition from 2D animation and blew audiences away in the process, proving that this style of animation was here to stay and giving us the adorable female protagonist that Disney cannot seem to let go of. In 2012, you had Wreck-It Ralph, which took their animation a step further by combining different art styles from well-known games in a way that didn't feel jarring while integrating retro 2D elements and pulling off one of the only actual good twist villains in a roster of like 5 billion. Inside Out, Moana, Zootopia, Coco, Disney was on a paradoxical run, proving that their domain didn't just extend to 2D animation, but to the fringes of what was thought possible with 3D films. So what the fuck happened? Stupid question. Over-reliance on live-action remakes and sequels of already existing franchises, coupled with lackluster original animations following the Big C, chipped away at the public's trust in Disney's abilities. There is some hope for the company, considering its brand new CEO, Josh D'Amaro, said he wishes to focus on storytelling and creativity. No, Los Angeles Times, I will not be disabling my ad blocker, you bunch of whiny. But considering many of their upcoming projects seem to follow this never-ending stream of uninspired, formulaic, and cheap storytelling, with the exception of one or two promising movies like Gato, I don't see them breaking out of this limbo anytime soon. But where exactly did it all go wrong? I don't know. But lots of people seem to point the finger at The Good Dinosaur as Pixar's worst movie ever, a symptom of a more malignant disease that wouldn't rear its ugly head until around 2020. So I was curious, does it still deserve this reputation after all this time? Let's start with the visuals. Oh, I'm sorry, did I break your concentration? Good, because this video is sponsored by Art Collective. Are you interested in premium quality posters and art prints designed in-house with no artificial intelligence used? The guys over at Art Collective have just that, and with the recent drop of their Dinosaur collection, they were nice enough to send me a couple of prints. Just look at how good this looks around my setup. I know, you can tell that I really love Godzilla. Every single one of their prints is inspired by some form of science, whether it be aerospace, biology, tech, astro, and even just vibes. Mind you, it's literally a team of 2 people making all this. Seriously, it took me days to decide which ones I wanted because they're all so good. And if you want to cop a couple, use the code in my description for a 15% discount on your next order. Thanks again to Art Collective for sponsoring the video, and we are back to the visuals of the... At least 3 animators were sacrificed. Photorealistic isn't even the right word to describe it. This looks better than real life. It's often overlooked considering the film's reputation, but the quality of the visuals are nothing short of a technological marvel. The way light interacts with the smoke from the geysers, the different types of clouds in the backgrounds of any given shot, and how they constantly move. The folks over at Pixar made several research trips to Wyoming while producing the film to get an idea of how to emulate the landscape of the American West. There's someone knocking at my window. They went so far as to raft down several rivers to study water and its behaviors. None of what you see in this movie is filmed with animation superimposed over it like how Dinosaur was created in 2001. Every breathtaking landscape you see was rendered digitally from scratch. As for why this happens to be Disney's second movie where dinosaurs are used as an excuse to show off their animation chops is beyond me, but it was also their first film that used volumetric 3D clouds in their set pieces as opposed to painting them on digitally like before. In fact, 85% of all the clouds used in some of their later movies like Incredibles 2 and the underrated gem Onward were just recycled from The Good Dinosaur. It really is an absolute monster of a film in terms of animation. I would argue this is some of Pixar's best work from a naturalistic perspective and holds up very well into the modern landscape. In fact, it's too good. What? I hear you ask. In case it wasn't already apparent enough from the few clips I've shown you, it can be a bit jarring to have such realistic backgrounds against this prehistoric beam-mouth art style. Which isn't to say the character models themselves aren't well made, far from it. The quality of the detail in the scales and feathers is on par with everything else. The problem is, they just look stupid, I'm sorry. If you guys have watched any of my videos in the past, you know how much I value art style and presentation in media. A show will genuinely go from a 7 out of 10 to a 9 out of 10 in my eyes if I like the art style enough. Whether that's that's a good thing or not isn't my problem, but in the case of The Good Dinosaur, it definitely doesn't do it any favors. The most appealing character in the entire thing is the Lady T-Rex, but apart from her and maybe Butch, there really isn't a whole lot for me to compliment here. I'm all for stylization, but most of this is just uncanny or straight up ugly. I mean, these raptors were just done so dirty. I know they were going for the whole inbred hick stereotype, but this is just sad. Which is a shame, because there are things I really enjoy about their presentation. How the Styracosaurus uses its frill as a refuge for the critters it collects, the methods and rudimentary tools Arlo's family uses to farm, how the Rexes drive cattle across the plains. It's all really cool to see, but therein lies my biggest issue with this film. The Good Dinosaur is deceptively shallow, massive in scale but disappointingly feeble in scope. The thesis of this movie is simple. What if the dinosaurs never went extinct? Would they adapt? Would they begin to create technology and industry? Would civilizations form? Would they eventually invent only scales? The concept is ingenious. It's a question so simple, yet the possibilities it opens are an endless list of literary and cinematic opportunity. So why does it feel like this movie gave such a half-assed answer? Paradoxically, in a story all about facing your fears, it's too afraid to do anything truly special. Normally, I try not to critique media based on a coulda, woulda, shoulda line of reasoning, because ultimately what matters is what actually occurred. But in this case, I kinda have to. The movie fails at fully committing to its own premise. The complete lack of towns, for example. The dinosaurs have developed an interspecies language, agriculture, animal husbandry, understanding of second-order effects, culture. They even discovered fire. You're telling me all of this is possible, yet they didn't even bother to spend time showing us what an agrarian dinosaur society might have looked like? And it isn't because they don't get along. The Rexes didn't even hesitate to help Arlo fight off the pterosaurs. They see him as an intellectual equal. I could only assume they'd do the same for the other herbivores, so there would be no Zootopia-style class struggle there. How cool would it have been to watch Arlo stumble across an interspecies community of dinosaurs with proper buildings and a more advanced societal structure? And I don't even mean a big city. Those places fucking suck. It could have literally just been like a small town. Dinosaur trade, politics, music, art. Maybe I'm just looking a little too much into it, but it feels like such an astronomically missed opportunity considering the circumstances. The Tyrannosaurs are a great example. They're meant to be cowboys, herding the longhorns and even running like they're galloping on horses. The only indication we ever get of where they're going is Nash saying down south, but for what? Is there a market? Are they just nomads? Are all Tyrannosaurs cowboys? And if not, do they also know how to farm? Every time it feels like the movie is presenting something interesting, it refuses to follow through, moving on to the next novelty without much ceremony. The pterosaurs are yet another good example, and to an extent, one of my favorite parts of the movie. They're storm chasers, following hurricanes across the west, preying on weakened animals. This reliance is turned into worship. They consider the storm a deity that supports their way of life, to the point of deluding themselves into forgetting their own names, conditioning them into a cult that repeats the mantra, "The storm always provides." Why can't we get more of this? Dinosaurs engaging in organized religion, making their own deities, conflicts arising over their legitimacy. I mean, come on, man, it was right there! Even thematically, it's a little constipated. There are several instances where it playfully flirts with going into the kind of territory that would make you say, wow, that's pretty dark for a kid's movie, before it ghosts you like N. Foyd. And I'm not expecting too much violence from a Pixar film, but all I'm saying is The Incredibles exists. And Toy Story 3. And Ratatouille. It feels like the filmmakers were too hesitant to try something new, which is really disappointing, considering Pixar was once the studio that made boundaries look like a mere suggestion. And I know what you're thinking. No, that line wasn't AI. It was off the dome. But it's not all bad. The film is pretty unique in how it lacks any one villain. I lied to your sickly face. Nature is the antagonist. Throughout the film, we see Arlo battling with the elements around him in the form of storms, starvation, predators, and alcohol poisoning. One of my favorite parts of the movie is actually the little 20-minute period where Arlo finds himself alone in the woods after getting swept out, and we see how he somewhat manages. For example, him building the shelter is a neat little reminder that even though he is a coward, he was still raised on a farm. He has some level of survivalist know-how, albeit pretty limited. We see how he warms up to Spot despite what happened to his father, coming to the realization that survival depends on the two of them working together in instances of quiet understanding. A lot of scenes in this film are actually incredibly solemn. Much of Arlo and Spot's relationship is built through unspoken agreements and moments where you can almost see what it is they're thinking. The scene where Arlo says goodbye to Spot, a literal personification of him letting go of his past, a benchmark for his maturity, is completely devoid of dialogue, and I think that's awesome. Not to mention the single best scene in the film. It's full of that classic Pixar sauce. Some call it boring, but I've always appreciated this kind of show don't tell. In a world where movies, especially animated, feel the need to spell it out for their audience, it's a refreshing reminder of a time when even kids' movies respected their viewers. Now, Arlo as a character is another story. I hate Shinji from Evangelion. Regardless of Eva's quality as a series, I couldn't fucking stand this guy for the first 3 episodes. I will always respect Gainax for the boldness and audacity it took to personify a quivering vagina as a 14-year-old boy. The point I'm trying to make is I'm not a huge fan of the cowardly to the point of ineptitude archetype, and Arlo unfortunately falls within that category. The Good Dinosaur is ultimately a coming-of-age story wherein Arlo deals with the grief of losing his father at such a young age, and I understand that, but it really didn't do anything special with it. Mind you, I'm not asking for complete originality. It's been 2026 years since the birth of our Lord, and with all the stories humanity has told, I don't care about originality anymore. I just care about execution. In the case of Arlo, there just isn't really anything there to appreciate. The other characters are fine, they're whatever, they get the job done. Spot and the Tyrannosaurs can be pretty charming, but that's about it. Now we're gonna talk about the dinosaurs. There are none. I mean, for a movie titled The Good Dinosaur, it's a little shocking how there just aren't a whole lot of dinosaurs. Sure. Good? I mean, I guess. But dinosaurs? We get a whopping 5 species in the form of Apatosaurus, Styracosaurus, Tyrannosaurus, Utahraptor, and Nyctosaurus. One of those isn't even a dinosaur. Thunderclap's group also has some other kinds of pterosaurs, but I'm not even gonna bother counting them since they hardly get any dialogue. We also see some parasaurs during the opening sequence, for like 5 seconds, then they never come up again. It's a little disappointing and, once again, another misstep in fully exploring this concept. From a paleontological perspective, nothing makes any sense. Arlo is an Apatosaurus, a genus that lived in the Jurassic period. He shouldn't have made it to the Cretaceous or beyond. I get that it's an alternate universe, but the only thing different is that the asteroid didn't hit. Everything before that is presumed to be entirely normal. Also, this has to be some form of slavery. You can't tell me it's not. If birds are descended from dinosaurs, these chickens were likely theropods at one point, so what makes them different? Are they retarded? I get it's a play on the whole chickens used to be T-Rexes thing, but it just brings up a lot more questions.
But Kingfisher, this is a kid's movie. You're thinking about it too much.
Yeah, and I suppose that poop in your pants is just the Taco Bell you had last night. But why? On paper, this movie should have been a slam dunk, so why did it end up as Pixar's first official box office bomb?
In the merry month of June.
Yeah, apparently the movie is notorious for having the single worst production cycle in Pixar history. Bob Peterson, the original director of the film, wanted to write a story with a more modern setting, putting the dinosaurs in a 1930s-style society, but this quickly became too convoluted with multiple plot lines that resulted in a pretty bad cut. He was eventually replaced by Peter Sun, who immediately reduced the scale of the story and made the plot much simpler, resulting in production being delayed over 18 months. Because of this, animators had to scramble, which is actually the reason for the photorealistic backgrounds, as pulling that off was apparently easier than stylizing everything, leading to the jarring disparity between the characters and the world. And speaking of characters, these changes in writing led to a lot of other dinosaurs being cut from the movie entirely. And to give you an idea of just how quickly this all took place, one of the only reasons we even know about these characters is because their toys were already in production. Like this Stegosaurus named Will, short for William, and this Ankylosaurus named Jack, short for Jack Inhofe. It got so bad that like 60 employees were let go from the studio, which imagine losing your job because of this guy, this stupid chud. If I had a nickel for every time a Disney production had to be reworked multiple times from the ground up because of overly ambitious creative differences, while also using it as a tech demo for their newest level of animation technology, all while having dinosaurs as the center of the archetypal hero's journey type story, I would have 2 nickels! So, is it a bad movie? No. I would personally rate it like a 6 or 7 out of 10. The visuals are breathtaking, and despite its simplicity in storytelling, I believe its lessons about overcoming fear and grief are ultimately good for the child audience it's meant for. Even if we didn't get to see the full extent of its premise, I can at least appreciate they took that risk and tried to do something unique. Because after all, what would the world of animation be without risk? Dang it. Channel members: Echo CT21, Zachariah Mahu, Frozen Bones, Iron Moose, Dracus101, Drago Flame, and Timinaj. Thank you guys so much for the continued support of the channel, despite me not uploading. This video is actually going up on the day of my birthday, so if you want to say happy birthday, do it in the form of liking and subscribing. And maybe check out the rest of the channel while you're here. I talk about stuff like this all the time. But if you made it to the end, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.